Well, kia ora koutou katoa, and thank you so much for joining us. Before we actually start with the hui, I would actually like to invite Hiri Aroha, skipper from Ngāti Pawa Iwi Trust to open our hui. Kia ora.
Tēnā tātai, tēnā koe i te pākai hau, he whakawātia kia tūwhireta tātai nei hui. Nā tēnei te manawa, tēnei te ora. Ko tō manawa, ko tōku manawa. Ko te manawa nui o rangi nui e te iho nei, o papatūnuku e takato nei, hei mai, hei manawa kura, he ora. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa painami te moana, hei ara hau mari mā tātou i te pōnei, uhi, wero, tau mai te mairi, haimi e hui e, tai ki. Tēnā tātai.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Kurt, if you could put up the first slide. Well, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. My name's Andrew Belke. I'm the Operations Director for Tamaki Auckland. I'm really pleased to welcome you along to our first hui following the public hui last month in Waiheke. We do acknowledge this was short notice, but my team have been focusing on progressing the actions we agreed to, but we also want to keep you well updated. And the purpose of today is to give you an update on what we've been doing since the last meeting, what we've planned, and also we want to work with you and understand your thinking behind a longer term plan from here. So we're going to continue to run these meetings as needed while we work through this next phase, and being really upfront. You know, it was a very clear message that you'd lost trust in Te Papa Whai from the hui that we held in Waiheke, and so we're going to work hard to try and rebuild that trust with you. And so there'll be a number of things that we want to do to actually to take us on that journey, and one of those is the goal to co-create a plan that sets out how we are going to work together on the things that matter for you and nature on Waiheke Island, and also the wider Hauraki Gulf. Due to the late notice, the Minister apologises. She couldn't be here with us tonight, but she is very focused on making sure we are working together and is committed to joining future meetings. Next slide. Just to introduce you or reintroduce you to some of the team. So we're might flash up a few pictures as we go through, but so I'm the Operations Director. Emma is the Operations Manager for the Inner Islands. We've got Shelley Ogle, who is one of our biodiversity rangers. We've got Steph Bowman, who is the Permissions and Planning Manager. Dave Houston, our penguin ecologists. We've got Apanui and Alice, who are Pou Taurangahau on the team, as well as Haurāwiri. Colleen Smith is our Strategic Partnership Advisor, and Julie Kidd is also a Strategic Partnership Advisor. Next slide, thanks. So we, along with the Minister, we committed to a number of actions at the first community meeting. But I first want to acknowledge the time and effort contributed by the local community at Putiki Bay. You've spent an incredible amount of time on the ground there, and your observations have provided additional context on the local Korora population to my team, and it's giving us a new perspective of the population that's at Putiki Bay. The rangers, my team, they've been on site as well as managers and ecologists over the last couple of weeks reasonably regularly, and those site visits will continue. We continue to work with Auckland Council to ensure those new dog regulatory signs are erected at Kennedy Point, as well as other locations around the island, as we know the impact on dogs on Korora. Our penguin experts are also visiting more regularly. That's Shelley and Dave principally, and they would like to connect with kaitiaki when on site and have those conversations. Dave has been on the Chathams over the past week, but is keen to work work with you to understand your observations of Korora, including spending time there at night in the near future. Next slide. So as well as that, we're going to continue with our Korora monitoring and also want to understand what you're observing. So hence those conversations are going to be really important on site. We also want to understand more about the breeding behaviours of the Pūtiki Bay colony, because as it's been shared with us, colonies are different from place to place, and the Pūtiki Bay colony is different as well. So we want to understand what are the differences with those birds. We're also really keen to continue to meet and explore establishing what a working group might look like, so that we can actually, instead of just talking to each other, we can actually build an opportunity to actually, I guess, develop a pathway forward and actually have real actions that will benefit Waiheke Island. Next slide, thanks. So we continue to support a number of projects on Waiheke, but we are really keen to look at developing a longer term conservation strategy with Ngāti Paoa, with the community and with stakeholders. Next slide, please. So as we've said, and you're aware that the department does not have the regulatory role in managing consent conditions, and so we do encourage you to continue to contact council for any breaches of the consent. However, we will raise your concerns with council, who are responsible for the resource consent compliance for the marina development. And I'm personally meeting with council next week with their regulatory team regarding the marina development and the ongoing protection of the Korora. For me, it's some of the information that's come to us today. It's really important that we actually acknowledge that, and those are the sort of conversations we want to have, so to make sure that actually we're not impacting on the birds at place. Next slide, thanks. So there's been an awful lot of focus on the Korora protection on Waiheke and in particular Pūtiki Bay over the last year, but we still don't have, I guess, the entire picture of the behaviour of the birds and what they're doing. And so that's what we're keen to do, is to actually learn from your local observations. And we are really keen to facilitate the development of a Korora care program, linking in education providers, and to support Korora initiatives across the island. I guess those are the key updates from us in the over the last couple of weeks. And now I want to provide the opportunity to the 4 speakers who've asked if they could have some time to speak. So I'm firstly going to go to Bianca to give us 5 minutes. Kia ora.
Kia ora, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, kia ora. I'm actually going to go at the end, so I'll let somebody else go first, if that's okay. And I just wanted to check that I'll be able to share my screen. I've just got 2 short videos I'd like to share.
I'll have to check with Kurt on the technology. This is the first time we've run one of these webinar style, so we'll work on that in the background, Bianca. But on that note, then we'll go to Karen. Karen, if you're ready to speak.
Hi everyone, I'm ready to speak now.
Cool.
That looks fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Hiri Araha. The Korora Care program looks amazing. Now, just so everybody knows and understands, I'm speaking this evening on behalf of Forest and Bird, but I also wear another hat, which is for Native Bird Rescue as well. So Native Bird Rescue currently has multiple Korora initiatives going, so we look forward to working with you on those projects. Now, one thing that came out of the meeting last week that I think a lot of people would like to sort of be made clear is that we all understand that DOC are powerless to do anything under the law. But as a New Zealander, and speaking on behalf of Forest and Bird in our community, the least we expect is that DOC could advocate on behalf of the Korora the Hauraki Gulf and our community. But the message we keep hearing is that the DOC science and technical advice, and this is to paraphrase your own words, is korora are robust and hardy birds tolerant of disturbance, as evidenced by them being present in highly modified areas with significant human disturbance. Now, this is like saying the people of the Ukraine are robust and hardy people, tolerant of disturbance, as evidenced by them being present in highly modified areas with significant Russian disturbance. Now, I'm not sure if the people of the Ukraine would appreciate these comments any more than our korora or our community do. They're deeply offensive and they're a load of rubbish, basically. So it would be great if DOC could advocate on behalf of the korora and our community and not use these sort of observations or your experience in these matters. And what I'd like to know, my main question tonight, is if the korora are so robust and so hardy, can you please tell me what's happened to the mainland Auckland population? Like, where are these hardy and robust little penguins hanging out? Are they in the marinas on the Marineland? Are they around the coastal areas anywhere? And basically the other message I've been getting from DOC, and this is going on the Gulf News this week, which was so disappointing, is that, you know, one of the reasons you're not doing anything on their behalf is they're not facing extinction, you know, they're not like the fairy terns. So as a result, you're not advocating on their behalf. You've taken the, they'll be right, mate, you know, they can handle it, don't worry, attitude. And that's not the attitude our community has. Our community deeply cares about the entire ecosystem here, not just the korora. And basically what's happening here right now in the last few days has been very deeply disturbing. I've been getting call after call. The workers are working right on top of korora, just meters away from angle grinders, from the vibro piling, and they're in there all day long and they're crying out in between. Now, if someone's cat or someone's dog, your treasured family pet, was in one of those rocks, just meters from that work, I believe we would stop work. We would take those animals out of there. Or do you think we would just keep on working? I mean, I just don't see that happening personally. So it's been deeply distressing for the protectors and the observers, for our community, to witness this animal cruelty. Today's been especially bad. So what I'd like to ask is that DOC advocate that they talk to Auckland Council, because Auckland Council needs to hold the developers to account. So yeah, it'd be great to see DOC. I know you can't do anything under law. We all understand that you're powerless in that realm, but you have this incredible power to advocate on behalf of our korora. Now we're in breeding season now. There's eggs in 3 locations that I know of around the country. You have no idea if we've got eggs in this area or not. So you cannot say breeding has not started at this point. And going on as well, what's going to happen is, as far as I'm aware, there's been no research done anywhere on the planet of floating car parks next to korora colonies. So I would like to see an advocation for water testing every single day in that marina. I can't imagine what all the oil, diesel, petrol, antifreeze flowing into the water is going to be like. But the water surface testing is what's going to kill our korora by destroying their feathers and their waterproofing. So that's the pollution of the water. The other big thing is I've read some studies from the US and from Europe. And those studies show that in Europe, I think it was 80% of boat owners have dogs. In the USA, 60% of boat owners have dogs. So what's going to happen to that colony? Dogs are a major threat to our korora. So I would like to see DOC also advocate to the developers and to Auckland Council that we have a fence and a gate to protect the entire rock wall. And that is paid for by the developers, who actually did promise at the beginning that they would do predator protection for the korora, and dogs and cats are predators of our korora. The rest of it sounds really amazing. I look forward to keeping this work going with the Department of Conservation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. And I certainly appreciate the concerns raised. And as we've said, that as you've said, we should be advocating for this. It's our strongest lever that we have as an agency, because we don't regulate the consenting process. And you have my word that we will do that, and we'll start that next week with the meeting with council, and we'll be seeking greater protection during the works, and have input into discussing how we could do that in ways that are going to have less impact on korora. And the other key point I guess you raise is around the future of what happens with the marina. What can we do to advocate for greater restrictions on discharges and dogs and things like that? So those will be part of those conversations that we have as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And we'll now go to Vanessa.
Kia ora koutou, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I just really wanted to bring it back to what I addressed to Kitty in the hui the other week, just with regard to how DOC going to be a better treaty partner under Section 4 and allow myself and other mana whenua and tikapa and here on the motu to fulfil our obligations as kaitiaki. These obligations obviously include protecting our taonga korora and pūtake. How are you going to provide a better wraparound service between other stakeholders, such as our own iwi and council? And I know that there's all these things that you, as Karen stated, that you say that you can't do, but it's quite confusing, because it's like we're trying to, as people that are down there every day observing what the developers are doing, it's like we're trying to fit what we see with the plan that has been submitted to council. But I mean, if on any particular day somebody was standing above a suspected korora burrow and making a noise with a piece of equipment that was in excess of 80 decibels or higher, as I suspect, and if I was to call Department of Conservation, what would you do about that? It's, you know, why are we trying to kind of match the breaches and the problems that are occurring on a daily basis with what has been laid out in this plan that's been submitted to council? You know, so yeah, my question is, how can you provide a better wraparound service and help us to ensure that the daily problems that we see occurring on site can be dealt with? So things like airborne noise, you know, the sediment issues on the water, all of those things. So what is a framework that you can work within? So if you can't be dealing with it on a council compliance level, which I do question that, and I hope that you have some ability to liaise there, but what can you do then?
Well, thanks, Vanessa. And your points are valid, and we, as I've said earlier to Karen's points, we aren't the regulator, so we don't have that ability, but we are a voice, and we would like to be part of your voice, and part of that is working with you on plans and working groups in the future. But the immediate concerns is the conversations that we have with council around how we minimise those works that are impacting on korora.
I mean, this is occurring on a daily basis. Today I was down there, I recorded this, and I had to, I had to I called council to make a breach complaint, and they actually said to me, oh, what's the address? And I said, well, it's in the ocean. I don't know the address. And they said, well, is it private? Is it council or private land? And I said, well, it's in the ocean. So it just gets very, very difficult to kind of to find a space to be able to bring these breaches and occurrences to the table. And DOC, as a wraparound service, with its obligations under Section 4 as a treaty partner, I believe that they fall at your feet.
Sure. Okay. Well, I definitely heard the concerns, and I'm sure that we'll have that opportunity to listen with. Sorry, my phone's going. As I said, I've got a meeting with council next week, and we're going to be raising these concerns with them, and I'm sure they would have got copies of the videos that were captured today as well. So hopefully they will respond to those, but we will certainly be raising it with council next week. Okay, thank you, Vanessa, and now we'll go to Kathy.
Kia ora koutou. I'm talking on behalf of Protect Our Golf, but as someone who's been at the beginning of this construction and seeing it and seeing all that they have observed constantly down there, I would really call for DOC to, as the other speakers have said, put immense pressure on the council to look at the consents in play and look at the work which is being done at present and is planned for the very near future. It would seem to me that this would be the optimum time to stop all construction while the birds are breeding. So we've seen footage of live burrows being disturbed, and I think Bianca and others will talk more about that. But I would like to also ask the Minister, and realising, you know, the limitations you have under the current Wildlife Act, but ask the Minister to call for a national inquiry into this whole consenting process and the lack of participation by yourselves, and just to see that this never, ever, ever occurs again. So that's mainly my points. And, you know, there are more concerns within the Gulf. There's a fish farm, finfish farming consent being supported in the Gulf as well. So I would really like DOC to keep a very, very strong presence in the region and do as much as they can to advocate for our biodiversity, which is disappearing fast. And I absolutely echo the robust. They're not robust. When their fishing grounds are disturbed with sediment, as we've seen with so many videos and photographs, and they can't find food, robust is not the word. I think starving might be. That's it for me. Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Kathy. And what we will do is we will raise that matter of the current works with council, and we will advocate for the korora. Your point around a national inquiry, we'll share that with the Minister, and who will be really interested to see how or what the key issues and questions that have been raised today. Thank you. Okay, now to you, Bianca. Hopefully you're still there, Bianca. I'm not getting any sound.
Kia ora.
Gotcha.
Am I back? Sorry. Sorry, I missed that. I was, I think my settings were changed. Is it my turn?
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Okay, can't wait. All right. So I'm just gonna share some videos. Hopefully, just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to share them off my messages. Okay. Can everyone see my messy screensaver and what looks like some videos?
Yep, it's come up.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna play. I'm gonna play this one first of all, and the reason that I'm gonna play these videos is because I think what we're hearing is quite a different story to what we're seeing on the ground. And it's really hard for us to be able to understand how the Department of Conservation can't make a public statement, at least, saying that what is happening at Putiki Bay is completely inappropriate. And, you know, with what's happening with the korora at the bay. And one of the reasons that I'm saying that, hopefully this comes up big screen. Can you see that video there?
Very blurry.
Oh, okay. Can you hear it?
No.
Can you see it playing?
I can see it, but it's just very blurry.
Okay, so now can you see it a little bit better now in terms of the penguin?
See, I can make it a penguin, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So so this area here that you can see here is where the piles have been put into the ground, and this was filmed just last week. And so what we're watching here is a korora that for an hour searched across these rocks for its burrow or its site that had been completely destroyed. We have footage of it falling down in between gaps in the rocks. We have footage of it right up by the scaffolding. We have footage of it by the piles that have been driven into the seabed. And so this was just last week, right? And so today, I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is why people are concerned. And so when you say that your staff have been on site monitoring and your staff have been on site, you know, looking at what's been happening on the ground, it doesn't make any sense to us how all of this can be okay with the Department of Conservation, even if we are looking at the correct application of the law and the correct application of the Wildlife Act, which affords korora complete protection from disturbance. But what we can clearly see is that there has been disturbance. Korora have been left homeless. Korora are searching for their burrows. And as we can see today, there is heavy machinery moving rocks and gravel around areas where we've been documenting them in the past few days. So this is why people are distressed, and this is why people don't have trust in DOC, and this is why people cannot understand why in other colonies around the country, where we can see korora getting the protection that they absolutely deserve and absolutely should be celebrated, but for some reason our korora here on Waiheke are objects just to move to the side in order for a luxury marina to be built at the expense of the well-being of the birds and potentially the survival of the birds. So those are a couple of the videos that I wanted to show you. Another one is this one here, which shows the kind of works that are happening today. Incredible noise going on here. The korora that was shown earlier was right beneath where these people are working. And so they are coming and going from this site. And a basic understanding of korora biology or korora behavior, and hopefully your technical advisors know this as well, is that korora will always return to their sites. So this is why people are upset. This is why people are distressed. And this is why people are continually reaching out to the Department of Conservation, because you are our go-to as the voice for our korora that could make a difference for their well-being. So one of the things that's another thing that's concerning about, you know, there are some excellent things that you've shared, Andrew. I know that we had a Zoom earlier in the week and some really positive and constructive kōrero, and I really look forward to some of those plans. But what we're not hearing is any answers in terms of how are you going to protect our korora that are experiencing experiencing this every single day, including today. Another one that I'm just briefly going to play is this one here. So these korora have been known to live in this area. The rocks were already marked by the developers ecologists. We've been documenting them for months and months. And they are now under that, concrete slab there. And the footage, the footage that we have of the works that happened in and around that area are absolutely appalling, and it doesn't make any sense how the resource consent has not been breached during the works that were done there in the first place. So yeah, it's like, I understand what you're saying and so on, but it's kind of falling a bit flat because you're not really offering us any solutions for what's going on with the korora. This is when the concrete slab was placed back onto that area where korora are known to be living. This is on the watch of the Department of Conservation and Lee Bull, who was the developers ecologists. That is where we were just watching a korora who was searching for their destroyed burrow for over an hour, finally go up into that area to seek refuge. So I guess the question from me is, when you go to council, are you going to ask them for a stop work? Because the activities that we are seeing are causing disturbance to the korora, and because the korora are currently breeding. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Bianca, and thank you for that, and thank you for sharing those videos. And I will raise these matters with council, and we will advocate to council that the risk to the korora is still there and still live. I can ask them to stop, and I can do that, and I'm happy to do that. However, the council are not obliged to listen to that, but I will advocate strongly for the protection of the korora and the fact that they're heading into their breeding season.
Kia ora, Andrew. I think that would mean a lot to the community. I think it would be a lot for building trust and showing that DOC is there for the well-being of the korora, and also that the Wildlife Act can be looked at in terms of its proper application and what is actually happening on the ground currently for the penguins. Just one thing before I go. I'm not sure of the program, but I know that there's some people that have questions and would also like to kōrero.
Great. Sure. Thank you, Bianca. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter the Q&A session. So if you do have questions, please pop them into the side, and our team are going to read the questions out, and we'll get our panel to respond.
Kia ora. Hopefully you can hear me, Andrew.
Yes.
So hi everyone, my name's Vicky Connor. I'm part of the DOC team, and I'm just looking at the questions here. So thanks very much. Got quite a few questions. So there's a few sort of on the theme of our processes, Andrew, when we do go down and observe. So for example, when DOC is on site, what observations are they making, and what would warrant us to be concerned? And if something was of concern, what's our process to deal with that after the concern? So there's I'll let you answer that one, and there's a couple more along these lines.
Sure. Okay. Well, I might hand that one to Dave, if you don't mind answering that, Dave.
That's fine, Andrew. If there was something which of significant concern, it would be something that would endanger the life of a bird, or be a risk of causing significant harm. They were the sort of things that we could act under. However, when we're on site, we do talk to both the other ecologists and to the developer around trying to minimise any impacts on birds, and they are very responsive to doing so. So yeah, we have a straight up conversation with them, and they'll will usually change what they're doing, or we'll stop and discuss how that can be achieved. So.
Thanks, Dave. And there's a couple more sort of along these lines. Does DOC get a heads up from the developers regarding the planned work on a daily basis, so we can decide when we send an observer? And then it's difficult for observers to, for the community observers to talk with DOC workers when they're on site, because they're either on the developers' boats or within the construction zone, which has a legal injunction placed over it. So, you know, how do we determine when we go down there, and how are people to interact with us when we are there?
Sure. I might ask Emma, the operations manager, to respond to that one.
Kia ora. Yeah, so we do get updates about works. They're not always like they do change, but we do get them. And I think just listening to what you've had to say about access to DOC workers, I think, Andrew, that's something we need to think about in terms of the access has been around monitoring Korora. But if you're wanting us to be able to speak to you guys on site as well, we can look at ways to do that. I think so. Maybe it's putting in an additional resource so we can talk to Dave from somewhere else on site. That would be a possible way we could deal with that.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks. So there's a couple of questions about who you're meeting with, Andrew, from the Auckland Council, if you could just clarify that.
We've set a meeting up with the regulatory team. I don't actually know the specific names of the people that we are meeting with. My assumption is it is the managers from the regulatory team.
Thank you. So I'm just sort of scrolling through these. There's just a question about the video that we saw, the footage that was shared. Does this sort of help as proof of the harm that the works are causing, that they're causing harm or death? The footage that's been presented today, would that help with making that call?
It's hard to understand how council will perceive the video, but from our perspective, when birds are going into their breeding season, those sorts of activities are not going to help at all, as we know, and so that will strengthen our advocacy position for that we take to council next week.
Thanks, Andrew. There's a couple of questions about what DOC is prepared to say sort of publicly and in support of the community, and you know, making our advocacy position very clear publicly. Can you speak to that, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we want to be a strong advocate for Korora and for wildlife generally, and we can advocate for that. However, we've just got to be cautious when it comes to a permitted activity. And so what we're, I guess what we're trying to do now is we're actually trying to up the game a little bit by talking with council to actually raise our concerns and raise your concerns in that space. So I think that's the greater leverage we have, is actually working with council rather than, I guess, putting things out in the open media, but that could change.
Thank you. There's a question here for Dave. Could you share the findings of the monthly observations he was part of with the foresight ecologists yesterday, the status of the burrows and the presence of the korora?
Sure. We did a complete monitoring round looking at from the Pahutakawa tree where the burrow is right out to the end of the breakwater. There was korora sign in about, top of my head, about 25 locations, I think. And that could just mean one piece of guano on a rock. and there was quite a lot of that in places. But we did see birds, see or hear birds in 5 burrows yesterday. But we didn't see any evidence that breeding has begun. Breeding hasn't been seen in the Hauraki Gulf before July in the past, which is not to say that it's absolutely impossible, but it would be certainly unusual. But I've certainly acknowledged that further south, particularly in Otago and Kaikoura, it can happen a lot earlier. The video that Bianca showed of the concrete slab over where the korora were, that's actually what is labelled burrow 10 by the ecologists on site. That was a successful burrow last year, fledged a chick. That burrow is still intact. The ecologists with the development to ensure that burrow has survived the works. And the slab was placed over that burrow to provide basically an additional layer of protection against accidental disturbance by the workers. We looked at that burrow yesterday. It had 2 birds in it, looking quite happy. And no sign that those birds were disturbed by the works happening next door to them.
Thanks, Dave. So just kind of following on a little bit from that, but there's another question here. There's a lot of community observers on this call. For the week ahead, before you submit this evidence to Auckland Council, what kind of footage, images, information can be gathered to help strengthen what DOC is putting forward in that meeting, and would that be of use?
Potentially. As I say, I can't perceive how Auckland Council will take whatever we share with them, but I am happy to take what you see as obvious breaches of the resource consent to Council in regards to this matter. So I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you. I'm trying to read the questions. The questions are coming thick and fast, so apologies for the time it takes me just to have a quick look at them. So there's a question here: can the advice to Council come from kaitiaki and actual korora scientists rather than just the technicians? We have proof of breeding behaviour.
Of course it can. And the conversation I had with Bianca earlier this week, I'm committed to listening to all contexts in relation to the behaviours of this local colony. And as I said earlier on, we can go with general penguin behaviours, but we don't know the specifics of local colonies, and that's why it's important to have the knowledge of you, the local community, who have that knowledge, and that's why we want to have those conversations on site.
Thank you. And there's just a little prompt here, which I think is for me. Can we please instruct participants on the call how to properly ask a question in the Q&A section? So I think that's just in case you're putting your questions in the chat. I'm reading directly from the questions and answers tab, which is slightly different to the chat. But what we will do, because I'm conscious there's a lot of different nuance to the questions here, we will go through them all and make sure that we are compiling some answers that we can send back around to you. So if we haven't actually quite got to it in this forum, we can certainly follow up and answer the questions that you've put forward. Okay, so there's another question here. Are we also working with or inviting Ngāti Pawa Trust Board to be part of all of the meetings, correspondence and discussions on this issue, seeing as that they have the mandate for all resource management and local government issues and have been relisted alongside Ngāti Pawa Iwi Trust as one of the 2 entities to be consulted on these issues and are supposed to be? The Trust Board, that's the question about.
So we're committed to working with our treaty partners, and that's key for us.
And another question just here for Dave. Did Dave know before he and the ecologist left yesterday about the work that was done after their departure, which involved 5 guys in the grinding, sawing, drilling next to the confirmed active burrows? They were doing this work up to 1 metre away from the burrow entrance. So Dave, that's a question for you.
No, I wasn't specifically aware of that power tool use in that vicinity.
Thank you. So Andrew, I'm not sure how much more time we have for questions. It is not all of the questions, but I'm at the bottom of the list of questions that's come through the Q&A. At the moment, I can have a quick look through to see if there's any sort of major themes that we have missed. But as I say, we can certainly go through them all and make sure that we have addressed everything and follow up with written responses.
Yeah, certainly do that. Thanks, Vicky. Maybe just a very quick scan of the chat if there's some key questions that we haven't already answered. I mean, they do flash up on the screen, so I did catch one which was around the use of the word robust, and I think that's fair enough. When we use a word like robust, it's not well defined and could be termed as loose, and I think we'll be a lot more careful about how we describe these birds or korora, and recognising that there are so many different impacts in and around the Waiheke Gulf that they're being impacted by.
Thanks, Andrew. I actually think that, so thank you. I think some people have been copying across the questions from the chat into the Q&A, so I think we've done the main themes. Thank you.
Well, kia ora, thank you. Thanks, Vicky. Okay, so the next steps for us, our next hui date is still to be confirmed, but we certainly want to hear what you would like to focus on before we actually have that next hui, and that hopefully that'll be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And our team will gather all the information that's been shared tonight. And I do really want to hear from you. I want to receive feedback from you, especially around the establishment of a joint working group and the development of a long-term conservation strategy for Waiheke. So those are 2 really key things. I just want to get your feel and feedback on that. And also the development of the Korora Care education program. And that will be another really important milestone if we can actually get some feedback from you on how you feel about that and how you'd like to take that forward. So those are the key things. And as I said, the other key action obviously is meeting with council next week, and I will advocate for greater protection of the Korora site, and I will raise your concerns and ask them if they will stop the work on those places where the penguins are potentially breeding and nesting or starting to. And so, as I said, I can ask. I can't guarantee what council will do with regards to that, but we will do our utmost, and we will certainly step up our game in this matter. If no more questions have popped up in the Q&A, then I'd just like to thank you all very much for your valuable time and sharing your heartfelt thoughts this evening. And we certainly are a lot better well informed as a result of hearing from you tonight. So be well, and I'll hand you back to Hiri Araha to close us.
Tina koe Anaru, Andrew, mō ngā mahi I wanginui te hāpori, hoi anō tina rawa te koutou, te hāpori o te arairoa, te motu arairoa o te reo Waiheke whānui, tēnei te mihi o Ngāti Pāwa kia koutou mō inei, tēnei kaupapa tino, he kaupapa tino nui tēnei I wanginui a tātou, kia ia ngā a wanga mo a tātou korora mō te wāhi o pūtuki anō hoki no reira tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. Ka mutu ki konei, hikitia te rongo mai whiti o tēnei o ngā hui te pōnei, tukua kia ea, tukua kia oi, ko ranginui ki runga, ko papatuana ki raro, tūturu whakamaua kia tina, haungi e hui e, tai ki. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora. Kia ora here aroha. And thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you coming along this evening. Kia ora.